Many construction companies struggle to improve profitability. If this sounds familiar, this guide will help you take concrete steps towards increasing profit on every single job. And we're going to do it in 6 practical steps. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what it is you need to do in order for you to improve your profitability. And the goal here is nothing less than a double-digit percentage increase in profitability. If you think this sounds like something you want to achieve, then let's get into it. And let's start with the 2 metrics that you absolutely must control: cost per hour and billing rate. Together, they will determine your profitability. Now, to keep things relatively simple here, we'll use an example company, a construction company with 20 employees using hourly rates. And for the purpose of simplicity, we're only including labor here. If you want to make sure that you don't trip over all the intricate small details that I undoubtedly will be throwing at you, I do recommend that you download this guide here because it includes all the details I'll be talking about, and it's just a great way of making sure you have all the information available whenever you might need it in the future. The link to the document you can find below. All right, so what do we actually mean when we use the term cost per hour? Let me explain. Cost per hour is the sum total of all your monthly recurring costs, such as salaries and one-time expenses, for example, rent, insurances, and so on. Once you know these, write them down and then divide that sum with the total available hours in a month. This will give you the cost per hour. In the example we use here, the cost per hour is approximately $36. The second key metric you must understand and control, that's your billing rate. So what is that then? Well, that's the sum total of all your company's monthly billed hours divided by the total number of hours worked during that particular month. In an ideal world, these numbers, of course, should be almost the same from month to month, but we all know this is far from a realistic scenario. Billing rates tend to vary between seasons, but a predictable average is somewhere between 60 and 80%. All right, so now that you know the theory behind calculating your cost per hour and your billing rate, it's time to address the real reason why you are watching this video in the first place. And that is, of course, profitability. If you want your company to stay in business, like we all do, you obviously must cover your cost per hour and have a decent amount of additional money left for unforeseen expenses and investments. This extra bit of money that you add to your customer invoice is, of course, called markup. But here's the million-dollar question. What should that markup be? Charge too much and you will struggle to get jobs. Charge too little and you may get a ton of jobs, but you also expose your business to unnecessary risk. So, to make things easier to wrap your head around, here are 3 suggestions for markups, ranging from 50% to plus 100%. The general consensus in the industry, by the way, is that you should aim at having a markup of at least 75%. So let's use that as a baseline in our calculation. What you have here is the 3x3 profitability matrix, and it's a great help when trying to see the bigger picture of where you are as a business, but also where you probably should be. So let me explain what it is. The matrix here has 2 axes, a vertical one which outlines your markup and a horizontal axis outlining your billing rate. So far, so good. But when you add your markup to your cost per hour and then apply the billing rate, you can easily see what the profitability percentage would be depending on your markup and your billing rate. Most moderately successful construction companies are in the medium profitability sector with a fairly high markup, but also with a relatively low billing rate. I mean, they are profitable enough to stay in business, but I think they live dangerously close to the edge. One failed job could make the company slip into the poor profitability sector or even result in the company going bust. So what do you need to do to move into the high profitability sector? Well, you would need to do at least 2 things. First of all, diligently focus on improving your markup, and secondly, focusing on improving your billing rate. So let's start by taking a closer look at your markup. Improving your markup is unfortunately not something you do overnight, but we do strongly recommend that you start the journey towards increased markup already today. And the best way to do this is by selling more expensive services that match specific skills that the customer is willing to pay a premium price for. And the best way of doing just that is by selling services that are scarce. These types of services may require certifications or licenses that would give you an advantage when competing for work that do require specialist skills, or the work done is such that it delivers unproportionately high value to the customer, such as professional project management that actually saves customer time and money. But as mentioned, this will take time, but you should already now include more advanced price groups into your customer contracts to prepare for that day when you can deliver these higher yielding services. Here's the bottom line though. Your long-term goal should always be to increase your markup to 100% or above. Then let's look at the billing rate, because unlike markup, which can take years to improve, increasing your billing rate is much easier and a whole lot quicker. And that's why we recommend that most of your energy right now should be focused on doing just that. Sounds easy, right? Just do more work and send more invoices to your customers. Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that. If you truly want to increase your billing rate, you first need to understand the concept of revenue leakage and what to do about it. So, what is in fact revenue leakage? How do you define it? Well, revenue leakage is the total value of the work that you could have invoiced for, but for whatever reason didn't. For all intents and purposes, it's money that you leave on the table. So let me give you an example. If your billing rate is 60%, your revenue leakage is 40% of your business's full revenue potential. So what is that 40% revenue leakage made of, and what can you do about it, and how do you deal with it? Well, here's a list of 6 very actionable and relatively easy things that you can do to improve your billing rate. And let's start with the ones where you have an actual cost, but no revenue. First up on the list is unbilled mileage. Here you have 2 cost items. Firstly, the time you spent driving that you could have invoiced for, and of course, the actual cost of operating a motor vehicle. Just by making sure you invoice for the time you or your crew member sits behind the wheel can easily increase your billing rate by 1 to 2%. Doesn't sound like a lot of money, but should always include mileage to your invoice, because if you don't, it will eat into your profitability. The next item on the list is time spent sourcing materials. This is one of those hidden cost items that really eats profitability and where there's no earthly reason why you shouldn't invoice for it. This is clearly time that you spend on advancing a customer job, and the time that you spend sourcing the right material suitable for the job, or the time you spend finding a bargain for your customer, is directly benefiting your customers. So you should invoice for it. A conservative estimate is that you can easily increase your billing rate by 1 to 2% simply by charging for the time you spend sourcing material. Then we have roundings. For example, rounding up to the closest 30 minutes when work stops at the end of the day. And this one always gets me. You see, at first glance, it may look that you're simply trying to inflate your invoices, but that's not really the purpose of roundings. Roundings is a really convenient way for everyone, including the customer, by the way, to capture all the real-world imprecisions and interruptions of construction work while reducing administrative overhead for everyone. I know it sounds like a really small detail, but over the course of a month, those 30 minutes per day per worker do add up to about 3 to 4% to your billing rate. Next on the list is hidden discounts. This is lost revenue that you are in effect gifting your customer. This may be because you might want to please a particular difficult or really important customer, and is often mistakenly justified as cost of sale. But here's the deal, nothing could be further from the truth. Examples of hidden discounts include things like not invoicing for scaffolding or tools and materials when it is contractually billable, or you're extending payment terms beyond standard terms. And by the way, also exposing your business to credit risk in the process. Hidden discounts also include passing through supplier or volume discounts to your customer without retaining agreed margins. Or you're providing uncharged coordination services between architects, surveyors, and inspectors that fall outside the contracted scope of work. Whatever it is, the impact hidden discounts have on your billing rate is surprisingly large, easily 3 to 4%. Let's now look at extra work and change orders, because the positive impact of these can be significant, provided that you do things correctly. So we all know how quickly things can change on a job site. Previously agreed tasks may change, new priorities are often set, and new tasks are continuously added. And in this managed chaos, you can easily lose track of what your crew was busy doing before these new changes were introduced. And because the focus has now shifted, you may struggle to capture the time your crew spent completing these tasks before the change took place, not to mention the time it took to transition from the old task to starting the work on these new tasks. Only by diligently tracking tasks in detail will you be able to pinpoint down to the very second who was doing what and on which task. And easily, and this is important, in real time export this information for invoicing and then move on to completing the change request. A conservative estimate is that a small scale change request can increase your billing rate by 4 to 5%, provided that you capture all work accurately. And finally, let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room, rework. Rework is by far the biggest reason many construction companies struggle with profitability. It's devastating on so many levels, it boggles the mind. Not only are you paying for labor twice, but in many cases, you're also paying twice for material, shipping, and recycling. All the while, you might have had to postpone or even cancel some other paying job. And in extreme cases, even pay fines for canceling or postponing. Thing is though, you can avoid rework by catching mishaps before these become mistakes. You can correct misunderstandings before they're acted upon. And you can manage customer expectations by keeping the customer in the loop from day one with regular and accurate updates. If you're able to cut down rework by 50% alone, you can bump up your billing rate by at least 5 to 6%, perhaps even more. So, if my example company here was able to complete all the 6 things that I just highlighted, they would increase their billing rate to a whopping 80%, putting them well into the green, even without increasing their markup. But just in case they did manage to increase their markup, their profitability would probably skyrocket. So, I hope you found this useful. If you are interested in improving the profitability of your business, there are 2 things that you must do. First, if you haven't done so yet, download the guidebook now. Here's the link. And sign up for a free trial for BuildBy to get the tool that you need to actually complete each of the actions I talked about. That's it. You now have the information on what to do. Now you just need to make the effort of putting it into practice.